Okay, the recording's on. Welcome, everyone. Lesson 113. 113. Okay. Ali, what does that even mean? What do you think of clay? Like the material, like making clay? What is it? Okay. We're looking at some text response content today. There is content below this that I want you to address. Now, okay. So I'm going to address Jenna's question first. Would I recommend doing 3 essays a week from now on? If you're in year 12. If you're in year 12, which few of us are, okay, the minority of us are, right? I can probably count one, two, three, four, five of us are in year 12, right? For the five of us in year 12, yes, one practice exam a week is I would say an expectation, is an expectation. Now, I'll tell you why. Reasons why. One, muscle memory development. Literally, the muscle memory of your hands to know what to write, how to write, when to write, so on. Okay? Your hands need to get used to writing non-stop for 3 hours. Your hands need to get used to writing non-stop for 3 hours. Okay? Does that make sense? Do you guys know, like, it's pretty serious stuff to actually under time pressure, write non-stop for 3 hours? That's a pretty big deal. But that's a lot of time. That is a lot of time. I swear, I promise to you, if you practice, that is very generous. For 3 essays, 3 hours by hand, I swear it's generous. So the first thing is, one a week is important under time pressure, at first at least, right? Writing nonstop for 3 hours is a skill. If you've prepared enough, then the challenge to beat all the other students that are all 46 plus is who can write the most in the time that I have. Right? Because everybody that's at the top band of Victoria is going in there with so much shit memorized. It's just a game of who can dump it all there onto the paper. Okay? That's one. Second is you need to read a lot of examiners' reports to realize just how repetitive every exam is every year. Now, what does that mean? Right? So, the pattern recognition of realizing that the themes they test for text response about all the different books are largely going to require the same style of thought from you over and over again in very repetitive ways. Except the difference is every year it's a slightly unique angle, right? That separates the top students from the rest, right? The rest of every exam every year is very similar to prior years, including for chemistry, methods, health and human development, business management, etc. Right? If you actually think about the whole reason why we have an education system, why do we have an education system, guys? Why do you think we have a system? Why does it matter? Because the government of Australia as an institution has a responsibility to nurture a cohort or a generation that knows all of the knowledge it needs from you to be a fruitful contributor to society. So what that means is the chemistry exam is a lot less about how goated you are at chemistry, but a lot more about if the government were to nurture a student that has knowledge of chemistry, what would they want that student to be able to conceptually fathom, write about, visualize, conceptualize, and answer questions about in a very repetitive fashion for the government to go, you know what, a student that's done that subject and got a raw 30 knows enough about chemistry for the government to be satisfied with their bare minimum goal of giving students to society that are fruitfully aware of chemical concepts. Same goes for English, right? So can a student read a book Watch a film, think about who the author is, who the director is, why they made that film and book, why they put those characters, why they designed those characters in those ways to feel those things and say those things in those moments to achieve those goals. So, can people critically think? Or argument analysis? The government really just wants to make sure that you understand when you're being manipulated or how to manipulate others through your writing. It's developing that skill for your own good for the day that you have to write a work email, whatever it might be. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's really every year the exams cannot possibly be that different from the last. And for every subject, you have 20 years or more worth of exams to refer to. And what you should realize is that they're pretty much the same every every year with about 20% difference. So you can push 80% of the way just by doing 10 of them, practicing 10 of them, understanding all the content and being willing to consciously not make the same mistake twice. And really, working your ass off. You can get to the 80% mark. Does that make sense? I had a friend who got a Raw 41 in English and they didn't even finish like a section of the exam. Do you know what I mean? Like, so can I prove to the government with the amount that I write that I have a brain, I'm a critical thinker, and that I'm intelligent in some way, shape, or form? Okay. So, okay, Ali said, what do I think of, oh, clavicular. I mean, disgracefully detrimental to society. Um, and what, you know? If you're stupid enough to fall for it, then it's not your fault. It is what it is. Okay. Now, I've got practice exam for which section? No, a practice exam has all three sections. So you put on a timer, you put on a 15-minute timer, right? And with that 15-minute timer, you spend time reading, you strategize in reading time, and then you get to writing. Now, one full exam per week is what I'm saying. At this point, we're in August, we're like 2 months out. So one full exam per week is fair enough so that you can get 10 exams done by the day, which gives you 10 different combinations. No notes, no chat GPT, nothing to help you, pen and paper, all the ideas that you have. Force yourself to write under pressure. How do we practice like preparation to do before writing an exam? Guys, the only way to know what it feels like to swim in the deep end is to swim in the deep end. The only way to be able to prepare to know how to open an exam, see a prompt you've never seen before, and how to respond instantly is to do it. And what does that actually look like? What that means is you have to be able to break down an exam prompt. So, for example, I'll actually pull that question across. Because look at this, everyone. Right? Let's look at this question. One, the whole point is that the only way to swim in the deep end or to learn what it feels like to swim in the deep end is to actually swim in the deep end, right? That's the first thing. Two, you can critically break down prompts by scrutinizing them and being really critical about the prompts to get to the bottom of it. So that's what we're going to do today. Um, and I'm going to call it scrutinizing text response prompts. Scrutinizing prompts, which we'll get to. Okay. It's a series of being able to ask questions of the prompt. If you can split the prompt into a variety of questions and then answer your own questions about the text in regards to the prompt, you can write anything about anything on the spot. So I'm looking at your question in chat. I'm going, how am I meant to prepare to know how to see a question in chat that's prompting me to respond and for me to respond adequately? How am I meant to know? Do you know what I mean? Like, first of all, I've done it a lot. Second of all, I look at your question and I critically break it down. Okay, but how do we practice? What is practice? Okay, that comes from exposure, being able to reiterate a skill again and again. So you need to actually do the exams before writing an exam. What does my student need to know before opening an exam? Ah, the skills to break down a prompt so that they have questions that they ask themselves, which they can use to answer, which gives them content to write about. By asking questions, you create infinite things to write about. Does that make sense? I've got, do most people finish early in the English exam, Raya? No. Not in the English exam. In other exams, I mean, top students normally do finish early, but in English exams, you're probably going to be under the pump writing till the last couple minutes because you want to get as much down as possible, right? So most people don't finish the English exam early, most high achievers, I would say. Whereas, like, if you're really good at maths, it's very easy to finish methods exam one quickly. Like methods exam one should be, a lot of people will be finishing methods exam one quite early. Or whereas for me, like even like health and human development, because it's a writing subject and I'm jam-packing my answers, it took me a while to get to the end. Or like studio arts, I'm jam-packing pages and pages full of essays about my art and an artwork that they're showing me and da da da. I'm not finishing early, even though I'm, rank one in Victoria for that section. Do you get what I'm saying? So subject to subject differs. Big writing subjects, high scorers don't finish early. Conceptual scientific mathematics subjects, there is a chance you'll finish early. Um, I can stay back after class if you need my help. Don't worry. Um, if we were to pre-prepare paragraphs to memorize, do we do these based off of themes or okay? Great questions. Great questions. I'll pull this. These are actually really good questions. Okay, so and I would actually advise all of you to pre-prepare paragraphs anyhow to memorize for the exam. So the common paragraphs that are expected, I've um I've talked about them in the last three text response sessions I've taught. So books are normally about social concepts. So have a paragraph that might discuss justice or revenge or truth or silence, belonging, destruction, memory. Is there a verb in the prompt? Is it talking about to celebrate, to condemn, to mock, to warn this character in that moment, to glorify, to challenge? So we've talked quite a lot about what type of paragraphs to curate. If you want to go back into our notes and our lessons from like, let's have a look, like week 102, week 103, week 108. And if I go formulas to prepare for any text here, like this formulas lesson, power, storytelling, agency versus fate, memory in the past, suffering and resilience, morality, ethical dilemmas, belonging, isolation. Do you see that? Does that make sense? Murray, the challenge is to force yourself to use as much from your memory as possible. That goes for all of you. You know what I mean? At a certain point, you have to let go of your notes and let go of the safety and think, how much can I actually write from memory? What can I pull from my memory? And then after I've written it all from memory, let me look at my notes and add things. And then retry to write what I wrote from memory to then memorize it and reinforce it one step further. Right? Memory is really important in English. Being able to have content and quotes and characters and moments and paragraphs memorized is important, right? Um, okay. So I've talked about that in terms of themes to memorize. For this, refer to lessons 102 and 103. There's lots of content, but I will regather it briefly. Um, okay. Um, Now another question, also a great question. How does one condense a creative writing piece that was designed for 90 minutes into 1 hour for the exam? Fantastic question. You have no choice but to cut out content and plot, right? You have no choice but to cut out content. You have to ensure that the main plot points that drive your message and sociological dilemma, or whatever the main pointers are that show us growth and development are in it. But peripheral details, we have to sacrifice. For example, if the human body has no choice but to divert blood flow to save organs, it will always start by making your toes and fingers go cold because they are furthest away and lowest in priority. Brain and heart get the blood. So 90-minute creative scaled down to 60 minutes is same concept of ridding your writing of core details. And so how do we practice this? So how do we actually practice this? Right? Lana, this is what I would do. Put a 60-minute timer and see what you naturally have to cut out when you write that 90-minute piece in 60 minutes. Right? Your brain is awfully good at knowing what not to do. Does that make sense? So if you put yourself under that pressure, you will naturally realize, uh-oh, it's 40 minutes in out of 60, and I need to get a wriggle on. So put an asterisk there, and after your timer is up, you have data about bits and pieces that pushed your story back inefficiently, time-wise. Right? Does that make sense? These are really good questions and really good for the younger students to be thinking about the action. These are the challenges. This is the highest level of, I guess, challenge that you guys are going to deal with. God, I'm used to 90 minutes. How am I going to do that in 55 minutes? Or if I'm, how am I going to memorize all of this and so on and so on? So, bro, not even lying, my teacher said the exact same thing. She goes, the way to write more is to ask yourself infinite questions. Beautiful. Yeah, right. She seems like a great teacher. Um, I've got, so do we have time to edit? So, will we have time to edit? Honestly, brutal answer at the top level of the state. If we're talking about Raw 46 plus, and you're so well versed, so well practiced, you know all your content and paragraphs off by heart, and you want to push to get as much down by the end of the exam, you probably can't allocate any more than 5 minutes to editing. But if you're good enough, I promise you won't need to edit per se, right? 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes max seems reasonable. And even then, only if you feel like you need it. But I'll put it this way, like the sentences we end up writing on the exam are so rehearsed, and we would have done it before so many times that as you're writing, it's flow state, and you know you're writing every word you're meant to. And the other technique there, Raya, is read slash glance over the sentence you wrote as you go with immense concentration. Does that make sense? You need to step into the deep end and do exams without your notes. How do you recommend splitting time or what order to write in the exam? Okay, that's a beautiful question as well. And I think we need to know these things. Okay. Of course, you've got your section A, B, C. Imagine you get marked out of 10 for each essay on each section. You've got your text response, you've got your creative writing, then you've got your argument analysis, right? Section A, section B, section C, and you've got reading time. Okay, so section A is your text response, section B is your creative writing, section C is your argument analysis. Okay, So let's talk about time. Reading time, you get 15 minutes right at the beginning. Okay, you get 15 minutes. There's, this is what we need to pay attention to in our reading time. Now, on an exam, you got 15 minutes. There's going to be 3 hours of writing. General principles is that we want to spend as much of writing time writing as possible. We do, so we need to get all the reading and thinking done in the 15 minutes that nobody else in the state can write, so that nobody gets an advantage over you. Does that make sense? Every minute of writing time you spend reading or thinking, the state is getting an advantage. And I don't want that to be an inimitable anxiety. Now, not to say this should be some sort of inimitable, have I used that word right? Inimitable. No, I've used that. Oh, what am I thinking of? I've used that terribly wrong. See, but it's good. See, I have to be honest because I felt some doubt there. What was I trying to say? Let's just say insurmountable, easy, but I was trying to use a more special word there. That's okay. Not to say that this should be some sort of insurmountable anxiety, but just an indicator that, like actually, if you need to read and think, so be it. But keep in mind the general exam philosophy of doing as much reading as possible in reading time. Okay? Now, so you've got 15 minutes, and let's think about what we need to do. Okay? Reading time 15 minutes. So we're going to do reading time for section ABC and then writing time for section ABC, which is 180 minutes. Section, we'll just copy this across. Okay, beautiful. So in reading time, if you have 15 minutes and you've got 3 of these sections, in text response, you quickly glance at your 2 essay topic or prompt options, right? Think, which one would I enjoy writing about more? Which one do I know more about? And normally they should overlap, right? Normally should overlap with enjoyment, right? Which one do I know more about? Slash, can I flex my niche knowledge of the book and film about? Okay. Then in my head, I I roughly plan what my main contention or stance on this prompt is, and kind of scheme out and kind of get a gauge on what my body paragraphs will be about, slash what I'll discuss. Okay? Beautiful. Now, creative writing. This probably, this is quite abstract. It depends on you, but so in creative writing, again, you've come in with a fair bit of content or creative writing content memorized. So here you're sifting through your own plots and trying to map it onto the stimuli they've given you. So if I'm going here, I'm looking at these stimuli. I'm going, okay, I have a story. I'm writing about personal journeys, and my story is about a surgeon. Okay, and in my surgeon, how can I adapt the surgeon saving that patient's life to this story? Well, am I going to talk about the personal journey of the patient and the surgeon in regards to changing directions? Does my surgeon change professions into surgery, out of surgery, changing direction towards what, from what? Because of the surgery, my patient can change direction. Oh, or you were looking for the key for years, but the door was always open. Okay, so can I make commentary about my surgeon and the way that my surgeon perceives years and time and interacting with the other characters? and this boat eventually flying and flying away, how can we exhibit growth? How do, is it the patient that sees growth? Is it in the midst of my journey through life, I found myself in a dark forest where the clear way forward was lost. How can this be a metaphor for my main character? Do you see how this is really general and you can link it to your own story by asking questions? Do you see what I'm saying? It's, in a sense, it's so general that you can link it to your own story just by asking questions, right? Or let me pull across, for example, this prompt. What am I, th I mean, I'm going to show you what I'm thinking as I'm reading, okay? Um, Beautiful. Okay. So, but does that make sense so far? Does that make sense so far? I'm going to get to all of the other questions too, don't worry. And I'll put the link to the notes in chat as well. But are we on the same page so far? Good. Okay. So, I'm looking at this prompt, right? And really, the biggest key is how can I, my first thing is what do I think about that prompt, right? What do I actually think about that prompt? What's my opinion on it? Do I think that influence in life is defined by Noah and his choices in life? Do you know what I mean? I've actually broken down this prompt and I want to pull it across. Hold on. Here, look at this. So I'm thinking, hold on, we have to critically appraise it. First and foremost, which women are present in the book at all? Which women even interact with Noah? What does it even mean to be influenced by someone? Which women does Noah actually value, listen to, or subconsciously end up spending the most time with? Guys, do you see how it doesn't even matter that you haven't done this book? For those of you that don't know what Born a Crime by Trevor Noah is, it's not about the book's specific content. It's about the philosophy of being able to break down a prompt, right? Which women are even influenced? What does it even mean to be influenced by someone? Which women does Noah value, listen to, subconsciously end up spending the most time with? Which women and events in Noah's life can be correlated in regards to decisions that came as a result of influence from those women? In fact, maybe I could argue, sure, women had a lot of influence, maybe the most. But if you define Noah's life, his key decisions and his key events, maybe the male presence or absence in his life drove his key decisions, whereas his emotions and perspective of the world was shaped by females. So if I define Noah's key decisions and key events being more important in terms of how much he was influenced, then I might have to say that actually, no, women don't exert the most influence, men do, right? But if I define Noah's emotional disposition and his perspective on the world as more important to his existence and more in line with influence, then okay, sure. I might say females had the most influence. Murray, that also links into your question, but do you guys see what we've done here? Do you see this? Does this make sense? This ability to pull apart a prompt and come up with a unique idea. You know what I mean? Like, this is critical appraisal of a prompt. Scrutinize it. And I've put the link to the notes in chat. I'll approve your access here. Questions about that so far? No? None? We're good? Okay. And I'll brainstorm topic. Don't worry. I'll brainstorm that topic too. Okay. Now, section B. Again, you've come in with a fair bit of content memorized. So what are we actually thinking when we're looking at this? Okay, let's say my story is about a surgeon saving a life, and my topic at school throughout the year has been personal journeys. Okay, so I'm instantly thinking, changing direction, right? The surgeon, the patient, and then I'm thinking literally changing direction, figuratively or metaphorically changing direction. Like instead of literally turning around and whatever, right, he might mentally change direction in terms of his perspective of the world. Direction, right, in terms of his mental perception of the world, for example. I'm thinking, okay, a stimulus one, key for years, but the door was always open. Door was always open, right? So, can I adapt my surgeon protagonist to reflect and reflect on how short-sighted he used to be when he was younger, and he didn't realize the world was really his oyster, and he was kind of buried, buried by trauma, shame, and a broken childhood home with unhappy parents. Does that make sense? Right? Are we on the same page? And then I'm thinking stimulus too. Okay, boat origami to flying bird. So I'm thinking, okay, so at some point there's some ascension, some improvement and revelation for my characters. And then what's next? In the midst of my journey, I found myself in a dark forest where the clear way forward was lost. Being lost in a dark forest doesn't have to be literal, but we can adapt it to our story, to our surgeon in his circumstances, or for his patient. But do you see how you can do this about any story? Do you see, like, am I getting this through? In what language do I need to push this through to you guys? Are we on the same page? Can you tell me yes or no? Can you validate whether this teaching is effective? Because if it's not, you can tell me this is shit, Sapanta. I'm not understanding anything. Can you try it another way? And I will. This is not about me. So if you tell me, God, I don't have a fucking clue what this guy's on about because I don't understand this bit or that bit, can you explain it another way? That's my job. There is no ego in this. You tell me that this is shit, I will change. So I need some validation here or invalidation on whether any of this even actually makes sense, right? Beautiful. Okay, let's have a look before I go. Okay, I got it. Yes, I got it. Um, you know, yes, good. Okay, beautiful. I've got, how do you actually link these ideas all together? Okay, I'm gonna show you a skill, right? I'm gonna show you. Okay, so for example, right? You kind of have to see gaps or overlaps where other people don't. So you have to be able to kind of bullshit and make connections that other people can't. You have to make leaps. Okay? So how do we how do we make connections between all these different ideas? How do we connect all these different new ideas that we might come across on the exam to our pre-prepared writing, right? You have to be very clever and think abstractly. For example, like if I'm reading the chat right now. Could the third stimulus be like the short-sighted, right? And I'm thinking, even if you're a rapper and you're freestyling, right? Or if I go lost in his own thoughts after getting the worst results, I go lost in his own thoughts. Lost tin, it's a lost tin. I got a tin, I'm filling up the tin. I'm thinking, what do I think of when I think of a tin? Lost in his own thoughts, his own thoughts. After to forget, what am I forgetting? So do you see how I'm connecting the letters based off of what sounds are like? I I don't know. I'm just trying to show you like it's not a like it's the point isn't it's that you need to be a little bit crazy. Like you actually need to be a little bit insane and manic to make bizarre connections between things, right? So this wasn't something I'd ever think I'd see. This wasn't something I'd ever think I'd see. I'd see. I'm thinking see, what are my synonyms for see? What are my homophones for see? I see, like I sing on ice cream. I'd ever think, I endeavor, I'd ever think, so I'm thinking of rhymes, I'm thinking of synonyms, I'm thinking of homophones, I'm thinking of ideas that are parallel. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see like and that's not this is really high like this is really different to what we're doing in terms of the writing, but I hope you can appreciate what I'm trying to communicate here. That ability to be a little crazy and think abstractly, right? Do you get what I'm saying? Ah, man, I love you guys too, but right? So when we say connect ideas, it's about how crazy you're willing to be with the jump that you make. So when I say in the midst of my journey through life, okay? So a short-sighted doctor being lost in his own thoughts after getting the worst results, even after a relentless pursuit of success, we could either make it literal, like literally this guy in a forest, literally lost in a forest, in a dark forest where the clear way forward was lost, where the clear way forward was lost forward, was lost, the clear way forward, wafer. I'm eating a wafer in the forest for the rest of the people that are not here with me in the forest. Found myself in a, you know, found my inner self in the dark forest as a surgeon.
Rap, just say that, bro. This guy's mid-class busting out into
Okay,
rhymes.
no, but okay, but you see, like, finding my inner self in a dark forest, right? So for the rest of my patients. So
How far can you, oh, sorry for interrupting, but how far can you like drag a reach? You know what I mean?
I mean, the thing, it's creative. So, in a sense, you could actually get away with quoting one of these lines and then taking the rest in the direction that you want. So, as long as he could either, it's like that's a great question. How far can we take a reach? Let's think about it like this. Your character, based on Stimulus 3, can literally be in a forest, and that's enough, right? And you can go brackets 3, brackets Stim 3, right? Your character can be lost in the middle of their life and isolated. And that's enough. Your character can be confused in the midst of their journey and talk about how they are, there is no clarity in their perception of their future, right? And that's enough. Do you see? Do you see what I'm saying? Or, the origami, like origami, boat, bird, evolution, flying, ascension. So to do with any of these ideas is good enough. Do you see what I'm saying? Because anything in this image is good enough, or even the reflection, falling off at the bottom, falling off at the bottom, not succeeding, right? The alternative or the opposite of every scenario is in the reflection of the origami bird and boat. But do you see how not every student sees the shadow or the reflection? Not every student can talk about the more negative connotation. What if in my personal journey I don't succeed and I fall off the other side and it goes the opposite direction? Instead of flying, I fall down and I fall through and it fails and it doesn't work. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that when you look at a stimulus, this is what you need to be thinking. Like, nobody else is gonna, not many are gonna think of that. They're just gonna see paper. What am I gonna do about the paper? It's a boat. Is that a wasp? Is that a fly? Is that flying? Do you see that's what you're competing with? Unless that's you, in which case you need to fix that. Okay? But it's like, okay, oh, and I could zoom in and think, wow, this origami bird has all these different qualities and edges to it, and it's so much more complex than the first boat. Oh my God, right? And how the bird, right, by the end has all this complexity and all these edges and surfaces and different shades of light falling onto it versus the basic grounded boat at the beginning, which was far more simple. Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? Right? Do you see what I see? Right? Good. Now, argument analysis. Remember, in reading time, find all the, think about it like this. You should be on autopilot when it comes to analyzing all the basic shit that comes up every time. 80% of your argument analysis is repeat. Guys, are we even there? Have we lost concentration? Yasmin to Jazvi to Aram to Avasam, Safina, Ruthik, Ryan, Moraine, Martin, Jenna, Ario, Arvin, Ali, Alana. We have a lot of teaching. I've got a lot to get through. Don't worry. We're nowhere near the end. Right? We're all still here. We're here. Safina, are we good? We're here, right? Good. Okay. Okay. So, in argument analysis, 80% of your argument analysis essay is repeat shit every time, every year. That means pronouns, whether it's first person, third person, right? Normally first person inclusive, first person plural pronouns, right?
Wait, sorry, bro. I'm so sorry for interrupting you again.
Go.
This is a really important question. So I kind of feel like it's basically close to impossible to mold my creative to fit the prompt, right? Or for example, for like Trevor Noah or Sunset Boulevard, which my school's doing, like you know how they provide you with stimulus and
Mhm.
you have your memorized piece. How do you mold it? Like how does that go? Because I'm so used to sitting down in the sack and coming up with all my ideas right there. And I think that that's what messes me up. Like how do you mold the memorized pieces?
I will, great. I will literally show you. I will take a paragraph that's memorized and I will paste it here and I will change it word by word to fit this prompt to show you. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you, bro.
And if you feel like your creative writing story is not moldable to your prompt or this sort of basic stimuli, then either you're not good enough at writing or your creative story is not good enough. It's got to be one of the two, right? Creative is a whole different ballgame. And the other thing is for text response, top students have roughly 7 essays memorized, right? Something like 20 paragraphs memorized, 20 paragraphs about different ideas, different segments of the story, different themes, different concepts, different characters, different moments. And they really know their book. They really feel their book. Like if you were to ask me about Norwegian Wood by Murakami, I could bring up the sequence where so on, the girl goes to the sanatorium and so on and so on, and this happens, and the impact of that and the dialogue of him in his dorm room and his infidelity and him cheating on his girlfriend and what happens in the quote in that part of the book and what that means about his identity and his emotions and his psychology and why the author chooses to show that as very earnest and candid but misogynistic perspective on his younger self growing up in a post-World War II imperialist Japan. Because I love the book, I learned to actually love it and I read it with love and I know the moments in it because I love the book. Does that make sense? If you can actually enjoy what you're reading and talk to people about it at a dinner table, then you're good enough for that essay, right? Oh my God. Okay, this is a huge lesson. My goodness. I might have bitten off more than I can chew here, but that's okay. And I'm going to change this title because it's not scrutinizing prompts anymore. This is actually an exam technique and Q&A session. Okay, so, but do you see what I've done by talking about how, oh, it gets more complex and now it's flying and there's all these different shades and there's all this nuance that you can now see in the bird in its full form. Okay? Now, argument analysis should be on autopilot. 80% of your argument analysis essay is repeat shit every time, every year. Pronouns, emotive language, appeal to appeal to money, avoidance of taboos, right? Hedges, avoidance of taboos. You might talk about metaphors to be figurative, of any persuasive technique classically found, so on. Like there's so much is just repeated every year in our discussion. The image and what they're portraying or using when we say, for example, in classic argument analysis, right? They might use an image that's idealistic to convince you that the project is going to look real nice every single time, and so on, so on, so on. So in reading time, what's the goal? Actually, spend reading time reading the passage intently so that you can find nuanced perspectives compared to other students while also locating the simple stuff. So, might open the 2016. No, that's Ing Lang, wrong subject. Which in saying that, Ing Lang, goated subject. Bellissimo. Hold on. Look at this, everyone. Okay, so when you're reading this argument analysis on the exam, okay, most students, almost not many students in Victoria picked up on this little to be blunt, for example. Okay, they just read it and go and went, oh, there's a mayor, fellow residents. Since the highway was diverted to bypass our town, we've all enjoyed the resultant peace. Oh, wow, it's so pleasant now. The highway makes, being diverted brings us peace and quiet. Oh, we're so glad to leave our windows open because there's such a fear of dust from the road invading our rooms. But there is a downside. Then we switch, so students won't pick up on the fact that it starts with a conjunction. She starts the sentence with but, and that's impactful. It's a sudden shift. Oh, that's a change in energy. That's a change in tone straight away. But she buys you. She brings you onto her team like a little stupid monkey. Hey, I love it too. It's so peaceful. I'm having a chat. Da da da. No more dust. But there is a downside. So I show you that I'm pragmatic and I understand and we're on the same page. But there is a downside. Now I'm going to imperialistically force my perspective on you. We risk becoming a backwater. Holy shit. Whoa, that means we're all going to be poor. We're going to be a ghost town. Ghost town. I'm thinking about a ghost and a town. Oh, a ghost town, empty town. I'm affiliating an empty town with my own town. Ah, but there is a downside. And then, of course, we no longer want huge trucks thundering down. She's saying, no shit, Sherlock, right? Really obviating with a lot of certainty, almost, almost as if it's assumed knowledge that she's on the same page as you. When she says that, she buys your trust again so that she predicts your rebuttal. She predicts you saying, hey, but I don't want the huge trucks back. Before you can say that, she says, shut up. Of course, we no longer want huge trucks. No shit, we no longer want huge trucks. I know what you're going to tell me, right? But we do want cars. Ah, that's the nuance. That's the gray area you haven't picked up on. And then we want tourists, and to be blunt, we need their money. What's the difference? If she says we want tourists and we need their money, she sounds like a dickhead. She sounds really taboo. She sounds really rude, really direct, and unacceptable socially because money is taboo and you can't talk about people transactionally in our culture. You can't say, hey, mate, I need you because I need your money. But when she says to be blunt, she primes you, she prepares you, she hedges and she goes, to be really honest, to be blunt, we need their money. We want tourists, and to be blunt, we need their money. To be blunt, like, hey, bear with me, like, hear me out. I know what I'm about to say is going to be crazy. With all due respect, we need their money. That's a big difference to this sentence without the to be blunt. But if you don't like, do you see what I'm saying? This is the type of thing that students need to pick up on emotionally, psychologically. Look at every sentence and pick apart every sentence. Please. So reading time is your chance to read and pick up on cool stuff like that nobody else is going to pick up on, and secure the basic stuff. Fellow residents. We, personal pronoun, plural. Oh, rebuttal, change in tone. We risk, oh, figurative language, ghost town. And then suddenly, to be blunt, serious shit, like no one's going to pick up on that. Do you get what I'm saying? So, okay, we're good. Okay. Um, Beautiful. That's that. And then reading time is a lot more simple, right? It depends on your practice exams timed at home. You need to see how much time you need for each section, writing from scratch without notes. Okay? We don't want to be using notes. You're not going to have notes on the exam. You're not going to have me spoon feeding you either. You know what I mean? So I'll do the molding. Now, I actually don't mind if you want to split it. I think argument analysis can be done comprehensively in 50 to 55 minutes max. So, first, if you need to jot down notes on your ideas and things you can't forget to write about in planning space, maximum 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes, okay? I think you should be good at 55 minutes max, 50 to 55 minutes max. At home, get comfortable with this, okay? At home, be comfortable with 5 to 6 minutes of planning and then 55 minutes max per section, 5 minutes to read over if you need, or as a safety block of time on the exam. Okay? Does that make sense? Other things, right? I think you can stand out. You can stand out with less writing and more nuance in argument analysis. Whereas text response is more competitive, probably the most competitive section. In fact, the stats should be out on that. Let's see what the most competitive section was last year. Please don't be a Word doc. Please don't be a Word doc. They're both Word docs. Please don't be a Word doc. No, please don't be a Word doc. Because I don't want to have to switch my screen share. That's okay. I'll tell you what I'll look it on my screen and I'll tell you. I'm assuming text response is the most competitive section. Um, or creative. It's got to be one of the two. Okay. Okay, hold on. Let me pull out the let's see how competitive each one is, because that'll give us a mathematical indication, Alana, as to, you know, how much time to allocate. For those of you that want to do like consulting work, this is the type of thinking you need to exhibit. How am I meant to know how much time to allocate this? Well, I'm going to look at the statistics. Okay. 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 Now, I've got creative and the topics. You can see that on my screen. I'm scrolling for argument analysis. Gosh, this is a huge exam report. Oh, and I've even got specific text selection and scores too. Wow, this is really cool. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why this is extra cool. Okay. So you can see who got the highest on argument analysis in section C. Anybody who did Jane Eyre, it's quite a complex book. Anybody who did New and Selected Poems, Volume 1, that's a very private school book. Twelfth Night is a very private school book. You can see My Brilliant Career, very private school book. Chronicle of a Death Foretold is a pretty private school book, right? So you can actually see based on the average student that does your book, have a look at what type of scores they get, just out of curiosity, right? Like 18% of students in Victoria do Oedipus. So Oedipus. So it's, in a sense, that's going to be averaged out because there's so many kids, you can't really get an accurate gauge. As a share of students, Warlick gets a big share and Born a Crime gets a big share. It's interesting to look at. But okay, let's have a look. So, okay, what we can see is in section A in your text responses, 12% of students are getting 8 out of 10 or above. 12% are also getting 8 out of 10 or above in creative, whereas 9.6% get 8 out of 10 or above in argument analysis. So what does that tell us? What does that tell us? What does that tell us? Text response is the most, and still, if you look down here, right, in terms of crafting a text versus text response, they're about equal in competition, but they're both more competitive. Uh, Wait a second. No, let me put it this way. A higher share of students get a higher score because more students do well in those two sections. What that indicates to me is that if you can be clever, it's a lot easier to stand out in argument analysis. It's a lot easier to stand out in argument analysis. Does that make sense? Right? It's a lot easier to stand out in argument analysis. I don't mind if you want to spend a bit more time on text response. I think it's fair to say that text response is more scientific. So you have to, the thing is in text response, you have to aura max a little about your knowledge of your book. Okay? Most competitive section, get comfortable with at worst case writing a full piece in 55 minutes max. But most competitive section, so you need to aura farm and show very niche understanding to compete at the highest level. Um, and so I would say acceptable to use 65 minutes if you're calibrating and less time for creative, right? For creative section. Creative writing, the thing with creative writing is like a short story can be just as impactful as a longer story, right? Flex your muscles, show you've addressed the stimuli, right? Use nice detailed vocabulary and beautiful story writing. Wrap it up and call it a day. You know what I mean? You can also see half of the students of Victoria pick protest. It is the easiest to write about. Um, and it seems pretty achievable in the sense that writing about countries is definitely the hardest. And it's more, in private, it's a very, again, private school topic, public school, and then play again is a pretty private school topic, right? Um, you might, and again, public schools can do it, but based off of the 1,000 students I've taught, it's the type of stuff that I see, right? I would say, like protest and personal journeys is a very safe bet. You can do really well, and you can, you're kind of carried by the wave of a lot of being compared to a lot of students worse than you. Um, Beautiful. That's all that. So 50, you need to be able to be comfortable writing an essay in 50 to 55 minutes max in crazy conditions. Because that gives you wiggle room. Alana, does that make sense? How much does memorizing help? A shit ton. Um, okay. So that should give you a lot of perspective. Um, okay, let's scrutinize this prompt. For example, emotion, not reason, drives the decision making of characters in Oedipus the King. Okay, so what is emotion versus reason? Don't we don't we find reason based on how we feel about circumstances? Or maybe some decisions are made when our frontal lobes aren't working, slash immaturely, slash impulsively, right? So can I think of events in Oedipus where decisions are made impulsively out of insecurity, based on fear, or based on rejection, based on failure, right? Erratically. Does that make sense? And then can I say that in general, most of the decision making in the book is as a result of emotion? Hmm, maybe not. Maybe there are lots of moral, calculated, composed, stoic, and well ethically deliberated decisions too. That can be my rebuttal. Does that make sense, Fruitfig? Um, okay, beautiful, beautiful. Um, I can smell the passion through you. I must not smell very good. You need to have a little bit of, you need to be a reacher. Just walking around undiagnosed. Me? Yeah, I might be walking around undiagnosed. With what, Raya? Yasmin's asked, can you do more examples like that? Of what? Examples more like what? How could I talk about the origami? Oh, I could talk about the origami being more complex. We did that. Well done, Jenna. Um, Beautiful. Yeah, in the exam, you write a brief conclusion for the argument analysis, Murray. Yes, you do. Just a brief one, just a quick, brief conclusion, summating it all. I really love this style of lesson. I really like this lesson. There's like 50 things in chat I'm not even reading. I got to learn how to chew the big piece mentality. Uh, so what does the to be blunt do? Yasmin, did I explain that? I explained that. It prepares you. Because if the to be blunt isn't there, then the mayor is really disrespectful and is just trying to say, we need money from you as a tourist. But when she says to be blunt, she says, hey, I know what I'm about to say is going to sound crazy because it's not very acceptable to just tell people outright you want their money, but to be blunt, we need their money. To be honest, she's making sure you know that it's only the tough circumstances that have forced her to speak like that, really transactionally, and to be a gold digger, right? So she says, to be blunt, we have no choice but to be gold diggers. Otherwise, it's unacceptable to just say, hey, by the way, I'm a gold digger, right? My school does protest. Is it bad that almost half the population does protest? In fact, no, because as you can see, even though half of the school, half of students do protest, it actually gets point 0.1 higher than play, which is a more niche option. So no, if you do well in protest, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Um, and Oedipus, yeah, and that's part of their strategy, right? So if that's their strategy, stick to your school strategy because if there's any school that's going to be really good at strategically doing Oedipus, it's going to be yours. My teacher told us to do Oedipus, but 18% do it. So generally, how to be nuanced since there's so many Oedipus essays. Oedipus the King, the average student scores 58%. Well, you can still stand out. You can still stand out, Murray, in Oedipus with your understanding. Do you see how we just broke down this Oedipus prompt together with your ability to actually, if you can do this, Murray, you will stand out. If you can ask questions like this and answer them in an essay, you will stand out. And the writing I've seen of you so far is really good and it will stand out. You just need to actually be able to write that without notes, fully from memory. Is it better to write a story and memorize? Or memorize? Yeah, I mean, yeah, memory is necessary. For everything, memory is necessary. Country is the hardest, but I feel personal journey and play are about the same as protest and potentially easier than protest depending on prompt. Country is definitely the hardest. Personal journey and protest are easy, maybe the easiest. Play is a bit harder than personal journey and protest because it's a little abstract. It's hard to write about play for an examiner. Being compared to students that's worse than you also means competing with students who are much better than you. Correct, but there's a lot more shitty students than there are good students. Do you get what I'm saying? So you're still in the minority by being good because not there's for a book like Oedipus, there's actually 3 times as many stupid students that aren't very good at writing that haven't prepared and are very lazy. All right? Do you get what I'm saying? Regardless if it's what you've prepared, you can stand out. Did you see what we did with the prompt? Um, what if I low-key what? Is there a way to edit or filter your spreadsheet to only see the pieces that receive the green high marking? That's it. I think I could make that happen using Claude. That's actually a really good idea. Let me, you know what? From now on, I might actually move green pieces into a separate tab. I'll action that. I'll add that to my to-do notes and I'll prepare that for you guys because I think that'll be really useful. What a great idea. Thank you. What an abstract thinker you are. Would I recommend doing Bad Dreams or Oedipus? Jenna, I would recommend that you do Tessa Hadley's Bad Dreams. If like, but I need to read your work on both. I need to, what do you enjoy more? What do you like more? What do you understand better? What do you like writing about more? That's actually really important. If you love Oedipus and you can talk about Oedipus at a dinner table, like whatever, go for it, right? Um, okay, okay. Um, for personal journeys, how can I avoid not following the stimulus? Taranum, you have to make it a rule. You have to make it a rule that at least in your first 10 lines, you mention that stimulus. That's your biggest challenge to get going. Or look at the title, and your biggest challenge is how can I weave the title into my story? How can I make my story about the title? And then you have no choice. It will be linked to the stimuli, and that can only come with practice. So do a past exam under time pressure, pen and paper, scan it, get AI to transcribe it, and send that text to me, and I'll read it. Okay. Um, yeah, I'm on the Fable 5. I've been on the Fable 5, though. Believe that. Um, okay. Should we go into the exam knowing which text we're going to choose? Uh, if you're capable of being... No, I mean, look, right, it's pretty obvious before you go into the exam which one you're going to like more, enjoy more, and write about. Worst case, sure, it's not bad to have some subtle prep as pure emergency. But the strategy is to just go all in on that one book and not waste too much time on another book. Because if you can know that one book really well, it's impossible you get a prompt that you can't answer, right? And Jenna, if I were you and you like connecting the stories, I would definitely write about Bad Dreams over Oedipus. Okay? Ali, if you can afford it, do it. Okay, beautiful. So, alrighty. Wow, we've learned a lot. This has been a really comprehensive session. At the moment, thoughts, feelings. I'm gonna adapt a pre-memorized paragraph to the Born a Crime by Trevor Noah prompt. Okay, let me pull up my some of my essay content there. Okay. Um, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Is it all right if I head out? Of course, go for it. Go for it. Okay. Uh, let's have a look. So I'm gonna pull across. I've just done Control F on my paragraphs about Trevor Noah that have something to do with mother. Okay, that's my challenge. To show you how we can adapt. Just a paragraph that just uses the word mother. I Control F'd in my notes. Okay? Okay. Noah begins by making his own existence a political scandal. Now, let's try and adapt this content to the prompt. Okay? Now, this has nothing to do with women, so we're going to change it, right? This topic sentence has nothing to do with influence on Noah or women in his life, so we have to change it. Does that make sense? So what am I going to do? Instead, I'm going to say, it is arguable that Noah's mother, being black, um, unintentionally influenced the trajectory of Noah's life insurmountably more than his father ever could, unless you argued that the unique conditions actually, ever could, um, in the face of immense discrimination and and a lack of belonging in either side of his heritage. For example, so I get rid of political scandal, and I just think about, that's what I'm writing. because I want to write a topic sentence that really has something to do with the prompt, whatever it might be. Okay. His birth violates the Immorality Act because his mother is black and his father is white. So actually, here I'm thinking his mother and father are equally influential in indirectly and genetically influencing a world of the troubles Noah has to face because of his mixed race background. Okay. That's how I'm adapting. Sentence by sentence, I'm thinking, does this relate to the prompt? And I can only do this fast if I've memorized a shit ton of these paragraphs. Like 20, because I had like 20 paragraphs memorized before any essay that I wrote. Yeah. So a sentence, I would think in my head, what sentence am I about to write? Does that sentence have anything to do with the prompt or my contention? Remember, my contention is something along the lines of, well, you know what? I largely agree, but you could argue that men exert a lot of influence, arguably the most, if you were to talk about key decisions and da da da, right? So, yeah, the memoir's point is not simply that apartheid was cool. So, we're not talking about the memoir's point. So, here I would insert an example from the memoir that shows interaction or influence at the hands of mother or father to then compare and generally say which one has more influence before getting to other women in his life, right? And I would know that at some point I need to mention all the key women in his life and maybe measure or compare to the key men in his life. I could argue that abuse he saw from men was very influential, was arguably very impactful and influential, even if traumatic, right? Abuse and neglect, for example. Abuse, neglect, violence he might have seen, whatever he might have seen, right? Um, so do you get how I'm thinking to mold this paragraph? What am I actually doing? Do you see where I'm taking it? Does this make sense? When you take a paragraph you've memorized and you mold it, does that make sense? Okay, so let's just distill it down into steps. Step one, have a paragraph memorized, right? Have a series of valuable paragraphs memorized, which I've sent you a lot of that sort of content, Ali, right? Step two, when you read a prompt, break it down like we did. Scrutinize it word for word and come up with your genuine perspective on the prompt and be ready to fight for your perspective. Step three, think back to all the examples and paragraphs you have memorized and think, what can I use to prove this point? Step four, when I start to write my paragraph, write a topic sentence that addresses the main point I'm making in this paragraph. That's okay, Ivan. Step five. The next step here is, what do I do? We I think to myself, okay, now in my head, I'm going to literally read aloud the first sentence of my memorized paragraph or example and the analysis that comes after it and think, how can I change the analysis or change words in it that match the words of the prompt? So the goal is, Ali, forcefully use. Shoo! Oh my God, there's a heavy sneeze, a lot of dust in my room. Forcefully use the words of the prompt in your essay, such that the examiner thinks you wrote it all on the spot, right? Every bit of analysis should read as if you are directly, intimately hugging the prompt and answering it. So In this Trevor Noah essay above, every example will be about how he's been influenced, then an appraisal on whether it was a man or woman, then an appraisal, how he's been influenced, then an appraisal on whether it was a man or woman, and whether women had some sort of distinct pull or influence on him, and why, right? Maybe proximity throughout his life, connection to his mother, right? Do you see, does this now, can you follow this step by step, Ali? And all of us, does this make sense to all of us? Questions, concerns? Good, that makes sense. So, questions and concerns at the moment. Yes, Yasmin, send me your writing, please. Um, okay, Ali, Arvin, Aria, Jenna, Martin, Mireille, Raya, Ruthvik, Safina, Tabassum, Taranum, Tajazvi, Yasmin. Questions. Do you get the gist of what I've done? Can I get a yes or a no? And no if you're not sure. Can we all come to chat? Tajazvi, Tabassum, Taranum, Safina, Ruthvik, Raya, Mireille, Martin, Jenna, Aria, Arvin. Good, good. Okay. Man, I'm glad, man. Should I make my notes to flashcard? No, just you have to freeball your writing, Marie. None of this flashcards, waste time, this, avoid that. No, you have to, you know, you know what I mean? That's okay, Arya. This is like three lessons in one. This is a crazy night. I lots of sidetracking. Exam technique and Q&A session. Um, I don't think we'll get time to write tonight. Unless, you know what we can do? I can give you guys the submission form, and you can just give me some writing that you've prepared. Like, give me a paragraph to mark that you've done that you have ready. The submission form's in chat. Everybody click the submission form, and I'll give you 5 minutes to put it in. Go. Or 5 minutes to it, a paragraph that you might have that you want me to look at, some writing that you want me to read over. If you don't have anything new, then don't worry. For those of you that do have writing for me, put it through. That's okay. And if you want to head off, go for it. Thank you, Raya. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad. Glad you enjoyed it. Get it. Thank you, Arya. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Ritik. And yes, you should get it. I don't have anything new. Do you want to put your Socratic dialogue in? Thank you, Jenna. Oh, okay. Yeah, go for it, Tarana. Good. If you've got writing to show me, submit it. Wow. Wow. Hold on. Is this Martin? Did you send this to me on Discord? Is the same one? Ah, okay. Yeah, fair enough. I'll just do it here. Of course, Arvin. Did you learn anything, guys? Murray, you're very welcome. That's okay, madam. Oh, okay. As in, yeah, I haven't opened the document yet. I'll address the whole essay as well. I'm glad. My writing's about an image. Yeah, yeah, submit it to us. To Jazvi, Taranum, Tabassum, Martin, Ali. Okay, let's have a look at this. Yet, unethicality is inevitable in a system designed for manipulation. Schusterman portrays this concept through the Siths, Faraday and Volta by revealing their respective immoral natures. In the novel, Faraday's actions are shown mostly morally correct and abiding by. You abide by, not abide to. We abide by. However, some of his choices, even though they are moral, reveal that compassion and gleaning is effectively restricted by the laws of Sithm. And so Shastaman makes clear that in order to appeal to one's own morals and conscience under such a system as the Sithm, one must bend the rules to show empathy. For example, okay, it takes a long, okay, good, but try and condense these prior three sentences into two, right? It took a little bit too long for you to get into your example. Thus, breaking the rules of the system, although breaking rules in a society is considered immoral and unethical, this act by Faraday was still seen by Citra, presumably Rowan, as choosing compassion over obligation. Through this, Shusterman makes it clear that system's laws inherently lead to some form of moral corruption, and so in order to preserve moral sanctity, a Sith is tempted to break the rules of the system. Additionally, Shusterman represents the impact of manipulation. The corrupted system is presented as a product of years of exposure to Goddard's way of belief. Although he presents himself as willingly embracing the new order, Shusterman reveals Volta's inner conflict surrounding Goddard. Volta self-manipulates his conscience to align with Goddard's views. He describes Goddard as being the future rather than the past. However, as Rowan begins to notice, Volta still holds apprehension. Mass gleanings experience intangible emotional joy. It's beautiful. Recognize the repulsion of mass gleanings, feels powerless under such a cycle, plays a character of Volta. Well, it feels like you really actually enjoy the writing. No, Tabassum, send it to me anyway. Send me whatever you have and then add to it. Please don't be avoidant with that. Guys, give me as much writing as possible. Please. Schussman presents Volta's only voluntary act under Goddard as merely being the manipulation of his own conscience. Martin, it feels like you really enjoy it feels like you can actually have a conversation about it over the dinner table. This is great. However, his point of no return, where he gleans a classroom of children, leads to a complete moral breakdown, allows Schusterman to emphasize the destructive nature caused by corrupted and manipulative systems where power is absolute. What do you want to do in life, Martin? What type of career do you have in mind? Schusterman uses the characters of Faraday and Volta as mediums to convey the idea that a manipulative system inevitably leads unethicality, inequity, and and questionable ethics. Let's not be repetitive there. It's just, but other than that, I mean, beautiful, beautiful. I think, really top-notch stuff. That's your time, actually. Really top-notch stuff. Um, that's a 909. I mean, my issue is that a lot of it is like, oh, too verbose. There's long stretches of writing are simply too verbose. Do you get what I'm saying? Just way too verbose. Um, can your challenge be to rewrite the essay that you've actually sent me and make it more concise, but don't lose the communication value, right? Make sure it retains all the content it's communicating. But before I open what you've sent me, make it more condensed, send me a new version. The Age and the Sydney Herald has been running a series of articles about medical misogyny. The opinion piece, Painful Truth About Medical Misogyny, written by Wendy Tuhi and published in The Age on the 7th of December, contends that women experience the medical system as misogynist and not why don't you say, apathetic, opposite of sympathetic? Yeah, we can be better than that. We can do better than that. Callous, insensitive. I mean, I want to say apathetic, but that's the opposite of empathetic. And callous. Intends to illustrate how the medical field treats women, making them feel dismissed, belittled, and trivialized. How he targets women in the medical system, the tone varies from outrage to angry and disgusted. First discusses the medical fallacy that women have a higher pain threshold than men. Uses inclusive language and rule of three. We need to recognize the myth. We need to listen. We need to be heard. Beautiful. And you could even say parallelism of the first person plural pronoun, inclu inclusive of all advocates, right? Because it's parallel, right? Three lines in a row of we, and the we is important here. Do you know what I mean? The usage of rule of three makes the idea come across, not makes the idea come across strong. You can instead just say reinforces her argument, enhances persuasion, and makes it memorable. That's valuable because you've given the examiner three interesting ideas there. The use of an anecdote from a helpless woman suffering endometriosis as an appeal for sympathy and to engage readers helps readers. Beautiful. Give me a quote from that anecdote and how it's impactful and how the language of it is impactful. That's what I want next. You've done well. It's not enough for me to think about marking it out of 30, but I would like to see a full version. I'm guessing that's Tarana. All right. In the embedded image of the text next in the embedded image next to argument one, a doctor is captured holding a stethoscope to a female patient's head. Be careful. Whilst holding another to a male patient's chest. By including this, the author incorporates humor, whilst the mistreatment of the stethoscope. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, no, that's okay. More so, this communicates to me that there is stigma around doctors and their interactions with female patients, um, not being rather equal in nature to the way they perceive and interact with men. I wonder why. Because, or maybe is it a women's breast commentary of some sort? Um, Colored skin is no big deal because on the exam, all the images have to be black and white, Tavis. So, right. And unless, I mean, what would you say about it? Give me some ideas. You might be able to point it out, but I need to know what your ideas are. So think about that. Two males were white, the woman was black. Maybe they did it for representation. Maybe, oh, but you can't assume that. No, don't pick out the race of the people in the photos. But good idea. Interesting to have that thought, but I think it's better not to. Um, yeah, no, this is fine. You're doing well. That's an accurate description of the image. There is analysis at play there. Um, just be careful with your apostrophe S there. You might, you know what I mean? It makes a difference. And yeah, female patient's head, stethoscope, female patient's head versus male patient's chest. Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be on. I mean, unless it's making a joke of, yeah, medical mistreatment of some sort. Yeah, fair enough. It's not mistreatment of the stethoscope, though. Mistreatment of women. How do I make my writing unsimple? Think about how you can take clusters of words and use less words to communicate the same thing. The stethoscope is being misused, but you've talked about mistreatment, not misuse, Tarasso. Like, we're not hitting the stethoscope, you know what I mean? We're not like, the way that you've made it sound is like, look, this is my stethoscope. Oh, you silly stethoscope, gonna put you, you know what I mean? Like, that's mistreatment. You don't mistreat a stethoscope. I mean, yeah, it's nice if I take care of my stethoscope, you know what I mean? But you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? You're mistreating the one. It's about mistreatment of women, not mistreatment of the stethoscope. And in terms of making writing unsimple, it's about taking your clusters of words and no, of course, it's about taking clusters of words and trying to think, can I use one word that takes away the need to use the multiple words I've brought up? So, for example, makes the idea come across strong can just be reinforces argument. It's on it. The issue there is a lack of vocabulary and a lack of lived experience of pushing yourself to debate and communicate things aloud. At this point, you can use AI and WordHippo to help you make things more sophisticated and concise. Ask AI to help you make things more sophisticated and concise in terms of vocabulary, but be responsible.